Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. As Bruce mentioned, I have recently joined the workforce cabinet after about 15 years in economic development. And so, when I was in economic development, worked a lot to help companies locate and expand across the state. And this topic of workforce has really been an interesting one. It's really evolved throughout the years. If you really want to look at a timeline when things changed, it was during and towards the end of the recession. The workforce conversation prior to the recession was, can agencies, whether it be state or local, provide funding for training for the new companies or the companies that are expanding? After the recession, that changed dramatically. There were people available. And really our pitch to companies as they were looking at Kentucky, it was really twofold. It was one, in Kentucky we have available sites and buildings, and we have plenty of people to go to work. A couple years after the recession, that changed. That changed pretty dramatically. If you look today at a survey of employers, the number one issue, the number one decision point for companies on whether they're going to locate or expand their business somewhere is the availability of a skilled workforce. So, what does that mean for Kentucky? Over the past 4 years, we've had over $21 billion of private sector investment and over 60,000 announced new jobs. If workforce is the number one contributing factor, that tells us that we've got a decent workforce. We've got people that are there going to work, that are attractive to communities. Kentucky's an attractive state. It's an attractive place. But there's challenges that come along with that type of growth. We've had phenomenal success. Is this my? That's fine. All right. Maybe. That's all right. We'll talk through it. So, when you look at where we are as a state from a workforce perspective, across the state we're at 4.3% unemployment. Let me put a number to that. That's about 7,000 people a week in Kentucky that are on unemployment. It's not many. There's new claimants each week. At any given time, we have about 25,000 to 30,000 people on unemployment across Kentucky. That's a really small number, especially when you consider that right now, as of this morning, there are 120,000 open jobs across the state. Those jobs across the board are in manufacturing, they're in healthcare, they are in construction, transportation, business, and IT. That's where the majority of the jobs exist. Yet we really only have 30,000 job seekers across the state that are not currently employed, who are looking to fill those 120,000 jobs. So when you talk to employers in your community and they say, we feel like we're fighting over the same people all the time, well, the truth is they are. It's the same people that are in that labor exchange, moving from one job to the next. So it creates some unique challenges because, and really a dichotomy, because on the other side of on the spectrum, today in Kentucky, there were 175,000 able-bodied individuals who could have gone to work or could have been looking for a job but did not. We know a lot about this population. We know that they're 53% male, that 70% of them are under the age of 45. About 80% of them have a high school diploma or higher. So they're young relatively. They're in their prime working age, but for some reason they have a barrier or have just given up in the job market. They're no longer seeking unemployment. They're no longer looking for a job. So they might be on a long-term benefit like Medicaid or SNAP or TANF or something of that nature. But they're completely out of the job market. These are individuals right now that as a state and working with our partners in the workforce community, that we are going to be putting a full force effort on to try to re-engage them into the job market. For some reason, they're not motivated. Some reason, there's a barrier involved. We know that they're not disabled. We know that they're not the sole caretaker of another individual. But there's some reason that they're not engaged. So we're seeking help from our local partners, whether you sit on a workforce board or at a career center or a judge executive, a magistrate. I can suspect that we all know somebody who meets that criteria in our communities. Somebody that's just disengaged. Our job as a workforce agency, as local and state leaders, is to try to help those individuals get over their barriers and back in to productive lifestyles. So to do those things, we look at 4 key areas that should be deliverables in a workforce system. And this, whether you are an individual, whether you're an employer, these are things that a workforce system should be delivering to you. First is recruitment and job placement. That's available across the state through career centers, through our KCTCS partners, most of the time free of charge, whether you're an individual looking for a job, whether you're an employer looking for people, that those resources are there to help people find jobs and to help employers find people. Customized training. If you're disengaged from the workforce or you have been laid off and you need to upskill quickly, there's customized training available. Again, most of the time that's covered financially for individuals. We'll talk about some of those resources in a minute. Most of that happens at the local community and technical colleges. They train over 100,000 people a year in job training activities, not just associate's degrees, but job training activities, getting them recertified in specific skill sets. Training incentives. This is a number that's really mind-boggling, but when you aggregate all of the resources that come into Kentucky, whether it's from the state or the federal level, there's $1.3 billion a year that come into the Commonwealth for workforce and career and technical education. There are resources out there for both employers and for individuals to be retrained or to be upskilled in their profession. And then skill development. Skill development is more of a long-term view. These are things that have to be focused on over the long haul to make sure that our communities have the workforce that they need so they can grow and thrive. So when we look at the skill development activities that are taking place, there's several that are out there and readily available and having a great deal of success. First is the Work Ready Communities program. I'm sure many of you in this room have been a part of Work Ready Communities throughout the year. We have several counties across the state, over 2/3 that are either Work Ready or Work Ready in progress. The goal of Work Ready, I think in the past there's been this misnomer. If you complete the application, you go before the panel, you get your sign and you hang it on your roadways, and all of a sudden economic development projects are just going to start pouring in. It's a bad assumption. But what Work Ready Communities does is it brings in those partners, employers, local elected officials. It brings in the education community. It brings in workforce partners so that communities can come together to address their needs and try to find solutions for them. That's the biggest outcome of Work Ready Communities. Because everything that the Work Ready criteria asks communities to accomplish are key for economic success. Things like educational attainment. Things like identifying what the long-term skill demand is from employers so that can be reported back to our education partners so they can provide the right degrees and credentials across the board. The other is registered apprenticeship. Over the past 3 years, Kentucky has almost doubled the number of registered apprentices across the state. And that's been in the traditional skilled trades programs. But we have the nation's first healthcare registered apprenticeship. We also have one of the first IT apprenticeships in Kentucky. We're also looking at within our own workforce, within state government, and are apprenticing several of the occupations across the board. This is a phenomenal opportunity for both individuals and companies to provide standardized training, and it's had phenomenal growth throughout the years. The Work Ready Skills Initiative. That's the $100 million that was approved a few years ago to increase the infrastructure of public career and technical education. I happened to sit on that committee when we were reviewing applications, and from counties all over Kentucky, we received almost $1 billion in applications for $100 million in funding. We were able to fund 40 projects in every workforce area across the state. It'll increase training capacity by 30,000 seats a year once all of the projects are done. We're starting to see in places like Logan County, places like Barron County, and Danville, where these projects are being completed, and there's more individuals getting into those programs. So most of those projects are on track. I think there's like 3 or 4 that have had a little bit of a sputter at the start, but overall, this is going to increase the infrastructure of our public career and technical education facilities across the state. The Work Ready Scholarship is the last one I'll speak to when we talk about skill development. This was initially approved to provide a scholarship for anyone seeking a credential up to 30 credit hours in manufacturing, construction, transportation, healthcare, and IT. The last money in scholarship, that's been expanded to include associate's degrees in applied science. So there's no reason why anyone in Kentucky should be earning an associate's degree in one of those areas and not applying for this scholarship. It was just expanded going into this semester. We'll be receiving the metrics about the completers and the usage of that program here in the next few weeks. But it's something that will allow individuals to pursue high-demand credentials for high-wage, high-demand occupations. So, as we look at changes that need to be made to our workforce system, and these are all things that we are going to be pursuing as Secretary Derek Ramsey and I have taken the leadership role in this cabinet over the last 6 months, there's some key things we're going to be focusing on. We're going to continue to work on expanding apprenticeship. We see that as a fantastic model, both for adult workers, but also students at the high school and post-secondary level. Our unemployment insurance system needs modifications. One, we have outdated technology. The General Assembly did approve some legislation last year to help us improve our technology of the unemployment insurance system, but we also need to modify it. As I mentioned earlier, there is 4 jobs for every 1 person who's unemployed in Kentucky today. That's one of the highest ratios in the country of open jobs per unemployed person. Yet our unemployment duration is 49th in the country. The average duration that somebody spends on unemployment is 18.6 weeks. The national average is 15 weeks. So there's some reasons for that. One is that we have some outdated policies around unemployment insurance, that it's not focused on reemployment. Unemployment insurance is intended to be a short-term stopgap so that people can either get retrained and reemployed or go right back into reemployment. But our state UI policy is outdated. We need a more equitable scale so that when we are in good economic times, that the focus is getting people back onto work. When we hit a recession again or a downturn, that we can expand that and make it so that people can have the benefits that they need. So we're going to be looking at modifying and really innovating our UI policy and systems. I mentioned apprenticeship, but in general, we believe that work-based learning at any level leads to better employment outcomes. Our friends at KCTCS ran some numbers for us, and at around on-time graduation. So how long does it take someone to earn an associate's degree? So just on its own, someone going to get their associate's degree, the on-time graduation rate's 11%. And that's measured on a 3-year period. So if someone completes a 2-year associate degree in 3 years, 11% of KCTCS students are doing that. When you factor in work-based learning, the on-time graduation rate jumps to 75%. In addition to that, the vast majority of the individuals obtain employment within 6 weeks of graduation. Work-based learning is critically important. So we want to incentivize work-based learning. We want to encourage employers who encourage their employees to go to school. So we'll be introducing a work-based learning tax credit that will offset the costs that employers incur when they provide tuition assistance and reimbursement to their employees. In addition, talent attraction is critically important. We have open jobs in high-wage, high-demand occupations in engineering and healthcare and that sort of thing that employers just have a hard time filling. So we incentivize employers to come to Kentucky. We want to incentivize individuals to stay in Kentucky and come to Kentucky for good jobs. And so we'll be introducing an individual income tax credit for talent attraction. So if it's a high-wage, high-demand occupation, and one reason that's really important is not just to get people to move to Kentucky, but to keep our post-secondary students in Kentucky. About 40% of Kentucky's college graduates leave Kentucky upon graduating from their college or university. We want to incentivize those people to stay here and take the open jobs that are here. So we'll be looking for those things. We also have to do a better job of working with employers across the board. One of the issues why people are on unemployment for so long is that we don't have a good handle on the employers that are really hiring. So we're going to be increasing our business outreach efforts. We're partnering with the Kentucky Chamber and chambers across the state to get a better idea on what the demand is from employers and what the skill sets are that are required. And then finally, full transparency here, the state, this cabinet, has not always done a good job of leading when it comes to workforce. Our job mandated to us by the federal government is to set standards for our local partners, to lead in a certain extent as to what the direction of workforce development is going to be in Kentucky. Both me and Secretary Ramsey believe that that's our responsibility and we intend to fulfill it. So we're going to be increasing accountability and transparency and really setting expectations as to what's important. At the end of the day, everything that we do within our workforce system, whether it's making someone aware of opportunities, whether it's training, whether it's re-educating, everything should point to employment. And so in the coming days and weeks, there's going to be a movement that's the standard, that everything we do should be pointing to employment. There's too many jobs that are open right now. There are too many opportunities from an economic development perspective for our goal in workforce to not be employment. So going forward, those are going to be our goals and objectives. At the end of the day, my 15 years in economic development in Kentucky have taught me that you can't get anything done in this state without quality local partnerships. Our job at the state is going to be providing resources, providing goals and objectives and leadership, but at the end of the day, the work happens at the local level. So all of us in this room, whatever community we're in, have a role in this. And it's our job at the state is to make sure that those relationships are forged and that they're high quality and that they're effective. So I look forward in my new role to working with many of you in your communities across the state. This is an important issue, not just now, but for the future of Kentucky. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate being here this afternoon.